One of the things that I had a challenge with, a very big challenge with, was authority figures. Because before I was incarcerated, I was the person that was in charge. And even though that I wasn't in a high position, I was still in charge of my whole work area. I always set boundaries and I set rules, and I expected everybody that worked under me to keep those rules. And also, I expected it to overlap into other shifts. So when I went into prison, the Lord told me, you need to just shut your mouth. And I said, okay. So I just really had to learn how to deal with authority figures in the sense of my boss that I was working for. While I was incarcerated, I was in maximum security. And so I was a trustee, but I still worked for a host squad boss. And host squad bosses are very, very hard. And they will yell at you. And so it was very hard for me to deal with her. I tended to act like a child because it kind of took me to my childhood. And so I was always nervous. I was very down on myself. When I was released from incarceration and I did find a job, the person that I was working for began doing the same thing to me. Like, she was not the type of boss that I was used to. She didn't supervise the way that I supervised when I was a supervisor. And so it's very difficult for me to deal with that. But at the same time, I knew that Christ had called me to respect those that were in authority over me. And I always said that I was a Romans 13 kind of girl because God puts those that are in authority in position. And so that was one of the things that God reminded me of. And he said, remember when you were incarcerated and you were you were in submission under the authority of those that surrounded you. But it was extremely hard just because of the way that this person was treating me. It was almost oppressive. And so I began to pray for some type of relief because I just didn't think that this was correct because I wasn't doing things that were out of order, and I began to pray about it. And so the Lord brought in a new manager, and that is the manager that hired me full-time and gave me a position. And now I am under her authority, and I am her administrative assistant.
My parole officer, I have to say he's awesome. And actually, he's my third. But I have gotten all men, and the last parole officer, he's the same way. I don't want to do a lot of paperwork. You do what you're supposed to do. If it's something you need to tell me, tell me. We will work it out that way. I'm here to help you, not hinder you. I want to make this as smooth as possible. So my recommendation is, even if it's a female, male, female, whatever, be honest with them. When you're honest with them, even the hardcore ones, I think that they'll have your back a little bit more. Don't try to hide anything. But first of all, you just got to do what you're supposed to do. You've got to go to your AA meetings. Don't hide it. Don't try to forge signatures. Just do what you got to do. You know, I did 6 months. Some days it was hard getting to those meetings, especially when I didn't have a car, but I made them. I made the time, I made them, I got my signatures, I did what I needed to do. The main thing is do what you have to do, and you'd be surprised how your parole officer will end up being. I've had some friends that have some that are kind of hard, but then all of a sudden I see some things that they're doing or that they haven't done, and then I kind of understand why. So I can't stress it more. Be it a male or a female, be honest with your parole officer. No, I'm not saying spill your guts and tell them your whole life history, because they don't want to know everything. Because if they know everything, then it may be something that you're not supposed to be doing. But just be upfront, stay in contact with them. If you're going to be late, tell them you're going to be late. If they schedule you for a time and all of a sudden you've got a job interview come up, call them and say, I've got a job interview. Is there any way in the world we can reschedule this, or can I come in late? And you'd be surprised at them saying yes. I mean, they want you to work. They're not there to keep you from doing anything. And a lot of people think that they're not trying to keep you from they're trying to keep you from getting in trouble again. But you want somebody to keep you from getting in trouble again because you know where you end up. And I messed up twice, and God as my witness, I wouldn't care what my parole officer asked me to do. If it's going to keep me from going back to TDC for anything, unless I'm going through the doors with a ministry, then I'm going to do it.
One of the dynamics of showing that my daughter wasn't ready to relinquish her role as my child's guardian is one day before my daughter got home from work, my youngest daughter asked if she could have company. I had no problem with that. She wanted to take her friend in her room, a young friend that she had made a friend with. So of course I said yes. Well, my daughter got home. You probably don't even know what kind of day she had, but she didn't want my daughter to have company, so she immediately told her friend to leave. So of course this started an argument with us because I gave my approval, but she said, well, I don't. And so that thing led to her calling the police. And so here I am, recently released on parole. I'm like, my child ain't called the police on me. And I've seen the stories with my oldest sister where they call the police on you and you're on parole, you're going back. Well, she must have got nervous because she was just trying to call my bluff, but I stayed. Because I'm like, I'm paying rent here, because she told me to get out. And so I stayed, and she ran. But after she ran, I got so scared. I'm like, oh my God, the police better come. Now she's not even here, and I'm finna answer this door, and I'm not on the lease. So I called Linda Strong, and Linda said, you have done nothing wrong. You stand. And I'm like, ooh, that's easy for her to say. So I got my parole officer on the line, and she said exactly what Linda said. So I'm like, this is confirmation. I have not done anything wrong, so I am gonna stay. And I opened that door when they knocked, knees buckling, because I'm like, I felt like Esther. If I perish, I perish. But I'm standing that I haven't done anything wrong. And I opened that door and told them the whole story. And they like, if you can show me some mail with your name on it, that's what we need to see. And of course I had mail. And I showed them. And they was like, ma'am, you have just as much right as her to be here. It doesn't matter that your name is not on that lease. You have just as much right.
Regardless of what we think, we have to align ourselves with biblical principles. The Word of God is true. There's nothing we can do to cause that to not be true. So we do have to respect authority. And I think that when we don't respect authority, that shows us some things in us that needs to be worked with. And it starts in prison. You have to have a respect for the authority, because many of them that are distasteful, it's only to build us up in certain areas of respect. Because guess what? You're gonna have a supervisor that's distasteful. And the practice that you gain behind bars allows you to tolerate that person better. And so it's all practice. I remember I took a changes class in prison, and one thing that stood out to me that I even use today, my instructor said, we only have each other to practice on. So if we look at this as this is practice, it is making me better, this authority figure is making me better, then I don't get bitter in the process of becoming better. I just allow them to be tools in the hands of God. I submit to it, and I realize that I'm growing through this. And this is the will of God, that I submit to it and show Christ.